What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Universal Mastery. Now, welcome back to my public YouTube channel. What exactly am I going to be speaking about in this today's video? I'm going to be talking about the Qlippoth, and I'm also going to be talking about the nature of the Qlippoth and what it's actually doing to you on a deeper, unconscious level. I'm going to be speaking about some of the energetic transformations that you will go through and that you will experience when you're dealing with Qlippothic initiation. And for those of you that don't know what the Qlippoth is, this is the tree of death in regards to Kabbalah. This is what is known as the underworld in our modern time. There is a spiritual layer of existence that is on our planet. There is a positive layer, there is a negative layer, and they interact very harmoniously between each other. And when we're looking at the Qlippoth, we are looking at that negative layer. None of us can escape the Qlippoth. We are all a part of the Qlippoth. So it's very important to understand what the Qlippoth represents within ourself. That's exactly what I'm going to be speaking about in today's video. So if this is something that you gravitate towards and you want to learn a little bit more about, you simply have one thing to do, and that is to stay tuned. Okay, so let me first start with saying this. This is actually really interesting. This is something that I just noticed. There is a literal dead bird that is in front of me right now. I'm actually going to show you. This was not planned, by the way. This was just, I came out here to record a video. I'm in this butterfly garden, and there's a literal dead bird that is sitting in front of me that I just realized as I'm doing the intro. I'm going to show you, just to show you guys what I'm talking about. Wow, what are the odds of that? As we were talking about the Qlippoth, there is a literal dead bird laying right there. That is a dead bird. Super crazy. It looked like something got its neck. I don't even know what killed it, but that is literally a dead bird. Wow. Okay, so that's how you know what we're going to be talking about is significant. Let me set this back up. Okay, so let that be a sign from the universe that this is going to be a very significant and important topic to really understand. All right, so we're talking about the Qlippoth, as I said. I think a lot of you that are tuning in right now, you already know what the Qlippoth is because you've probably been studying me and studying my content for quite a while now. And I've spoke about it many times in very much depth. If you still have questions on what the Qlippoth is, I highly recommend you go through my YouTube channel and you find any of my numerous videos that talks about the Qlippoth in regards to its Kabbalistic association. Okay? Now also, if you want to take your practices to an even deeper degree, I highly recommend you check out my Patreon. My Patreon is the first link in the YouTube description, and there's going to be tons of valuable information that you're probably not going to hear anywhere else that is in regards to the Qlippoth as well. All right? So we'll leave that there. Now, going into it, let me first just give a little introduction of who I am, just in case you're new to my channel. My name is Jeremiah Schwartz. I'm a professional occultist. I'm fully initiated in the entirety of the Kabbalistic tree. I'm studied when it comes to the 22 major arcana of the tarot deck, and I'm also studied when it comes to planetary energies in direct association with astrology. All right, let me move this up just a little bit further so we can get a good view. Okay, so here we go. So the Qlippoth in Hebrew is going to translate to shells. So this becomes very important because we want to understand what this shell means. What do these shells actually represent? Most importantly, within ourself. So when I speak about shell, probably the first thing that comes up for you is maybe it's a seashell. Maybe it's an eggshell. Maybe it's I don't know, any kind of shell. A bullet shell. Who knows? Regardless, a shell is solid. And I'm sure as this image came up in your head, you're kind of observing that. Like a shell is solid. It's something that protects. It's something that's hard to penetrate. Like a turtle shell. It's how a turtle completely protects itself. So, once again, as we're looking at the Qlippoth, we're looking at this aspect of our existence on this planet that is negative in nature, which does not mean bad and definitely does not mean evil. It just means it's negative in nature. We could think of it like the yin to the yang. And it's associated with the side of our beings that we most often repress and we most often don't want to feel because of its negative nature. So what we do instead is we create an identity and we create a persona. We create behavioral patterns that actually shell us. And when I say shell us, what I mean is that we take on an identity trying to protect ourselves from actually feeling what is negatively charged in our unconscious. So we take on this identity or this behavior or this persona to protect ourselves. It's a form of survival so that we do not have to feel and process what's deep inside of our unconscious, emotionally speaking. And this identity is the shell. This persona is the shell, this behavioral pattern that is preventing you from actually feeling and processing a negative emotion that is repressed in your unconscious. It is this thing that is the shell. And this shell that we create for ourselves is also what we use to interact with the world around us. So basically what this means is that there is this repressed, negatively charged emotional energy that's inside of our unconscious. We take on an identity we take on this identity so that we do not have to feel that emotion. And now we're interacting with the world, with other human beings on a daily basis with this shelled version of ourself, constantly feeding our separation from this repressed emotion. So we're constantly seeking more situations and more circumstances that are typically going to better help us survive. And when I say survive, I mean more so from an egotistical perspective, and are going to allow us to further separate from this repressed emotion that is existing in our unconscious. All right? This is the average and this is the typical state of the human being on our planet today. And it's not that this is wrong. It's not that this is necessarily bad. And it's for sure not that this is evil. This is simply a part of human evolution. And it's something that we all experience, something that we all go through to some degree in order to better understand ourselves as a soul and as a spirit. So in other words, what I'm saying is, yes, we come to this planet, we incarnate here to go through circumstances that actually separate us from our true self, just to relearn how to come back to the true self. And this is the growth process, and it's a beautiful process. So with that being said, as we're looking at the Qlippoth now, we're dealing with a portion of spiritual growth. We're dealing with the portion, like the portion of spiritual growth that is dealing with the aspects of the self that have been repressed, in order so that we can better understand the shell or the shells that we've created from an identity point of view, from a behavioral point of view, from a habit point of view, and just from a, we could even say, life experience point of view. So in other words, what I'm saying is that when someone is working with the Qlippoth, or someone is experiencing Qlippothic energies, the reality behind the Qlippoth is that it's a healing energy. It's also a destructive energy, but it's within that destructive energy that there's real healing. And at its deepest root, it is a healing energy. Because the Qlippoth is designed to bring our awareness to the parts of ourself that we've tried so hard to separate from. It's designed to bring us into touch with our own feminine energy so that we can start the process of healing and then reintegrating everything that we've stored within our unconscious that has been repressed. So the Qlippoth is an initiatory structure when it comes to occult initiation, or let's just say when it comes to spiritual self-development, that whether you're conscious of or unconscious of, it is designed to bring you through a healing process. Whoa, as I'm speaking, there's literally a spider floating down. I don't know if you can see it. It is the craziest thing. Let me see if I can catch it. Look at this. There's a spider. Look, I'm holding it in front of the camera. It's hard to see. That's a little spider that just started stringing down while I'm making this video. Look at that. I don't know if you can see it anymore, but it's actually, oh my gosh, it's hooked to my camera now. I'm just going to leave it there. That's beautiful, actually. Another very profound symbol. But as I was saying, the Qlippoth is something, whether you're conscious of or unconscious of, it is something that everyone experiences during their spiritual self-development, and it is absolutely designed to be a healing journey, a healing process, which inherently is going to be very tough. It's going to be very challenging, and there is going to be destructive energies that come into play with it. And the reason why that is because just the nature of the human being, we create such strong attachments to all sorts of things, all different types of things, to the point that in order for us to let go of these attachments, it oftentimes requires a destructive energy or a destructive influence to force us to let go. Okay, in a good analogy that I can really give is just the concept of like, it's like you're overworking yourself, and you're pushing and you're pushing and you're pushing, and you're doing it because your mind is like, okay, well, you know, I want to achieve this, I want to create this, this is what I'm becoming, or I'm doing it for these people, I'm working hard because I'm working for my family, whatever the case is. It's like you're pushing and your mind is focused on why you're doing it, but then your body actually hits a point where it's like, I can't do this anymore. And then you reach what's called a burnout. You literally are too tired to keep going. Okay, so this is oftentimes what takes place during someone's spiritual self-development in connection to these deeper, darker emotions that have been repressed. In order to do the real Qlippothic healing, integrative work, you have to go through different phases. You have to go through what I guess I like to call a progression of healing. And one of those surface layers is the attachments. So it's like, you know, you have a knife in your arm and you're in pain. The first thing you have to do is get the knife out of the arm before you can actually start treating it and before you can start healing it. So the attachments in this sense, whether it's attachment to drugs, attachment to sex, attachment to relationships, attachment to video games, you name it, The attachments are what first need to be let go of, and this is actually an intuitive process. So there are things that are happening in your daily life right now that you know are probably not the best for you, and you actually know internally and emotionally that you need to stop doing these things. So it's about being aware of what these things are, and then recognizing these are the attachments, and starting a slow but progressive process of letting these things go. That's the first step. Now, to let go of these attachments is one of the hardest things. So this is why the Qlippoth has such a destructive component behind it, because when someone's working with the Qlippoth, they're working with this side of themselves that is really trying to take them through very profound healing and integration. And if you're on board with that part of yourself, and if you're on board with that part of your own healing, then what that naturally means is that some of these attachments are going to be forced to be let go of in your life experience. So if someone's unwilling to let go of an attachment that they have, whatever it is, because they're working with this other part of themselves that is trying to better understand the true self, these attachments will oftentimes have to be removed through destruction. So in other words, something very destructive in your life might have to take place that is like an archetype of the Tower card that then forces you to realize, okay, now I need to let go. So this could be like you're in a relationship with someone that's not meant for you, and then your partner starts cheating on you, or your partner steals from you. This could be you using drugs, and you know you need to stop, but you haven't stopped yet, and then next thing you know, your body's showing physical symptoms every time you use the substance, and it's actually starting to cause physical pain now. So these would be little examples of this destructive energy trying to force you to let go of some of the attachments that are actually preventing you from doing the deeper healing integrative work. And this is what happens with Qlippothic initiation. This is what the Qlippoth is about. So now that we're looking at that surface layer of the attachments, let's get into the deeper, let's get into the shell, like into the center points around that shell of what the Qlippoth is all about. So the Qlippoth is literally a feminine aspect of our earth, of our matrix, of our universe even. And I say feminine because this is like the foundation of how to do real integration and how to do real healing. One, the universe itself is feminine in nature. That's why there's so much dark energy and so much dark space, which is what's holding the light. And actually that dark energy and that dark space is actually a different type of light even. But as I'm saying, the universe itself is feminine in nature. So as the human beings, we are aspects of the universe. We are simply the universe in a human form, which means the foundation of our beings, the foundation of our soul, of our spirit, of our physical body, our mental body, our emotional body, the foundation of it is feminine. So the feminine energy becomes very important to understand. So what are some of the key components of feminine energy? Being receptive, letting go of attachment, and feeling the emotions, allowing the self to feel. So with that being said, it's this foundation that sets up the proper tools for the self to start doing the real deeper layered healing work. Now, while we're experiencing Qlippothic energies, whether you're someone consciously initiating through it, or if you're someone in your life that's just going through a Qlippothic energetic experience in general, we need to know that the foundation in order to process Qlippothic energies has to be in that feminine energy. And the reason why that is because we're dealing with the shells, which rhymes with hells. We're dealing with the shells of our own being. So what produces the shell within the human being? What produces the identity What produces the persona? What produces the mask that the person wears in public, but is not actually how they're feeling on the inside? This all ties back to traumas. This all ties back to intensely, negatively charged emotional experiences that you've picked up from a very early point in your life. And the reason why that is because when you're incarnate into this planet, you come in as a whole integrated being, as a baby. And from the very moment of incarnation, this is where we go through our first stages of trauma. And what trauma simply is it's an emotionally charged experience that is negative in nature, that at the time we don't have the tools or the capacity to emotionally process. So what we do instead is we repress it within our unconscious, and we try to not focus on it, and we try to not feel it because it's so intensely charged that we do not know how to process it. It's too much for us. So at this point, it literally is a tool of survival because we don't have the tools and we do not have the capacity to feel that intense emotion. So it's like putting it to the side and then saying to the self, we'll look at this later. Except some people never look at it later, and it becomes a very big problem. But this is the nature of how this trauma starts and how this repressed negative emotion stays buried inside the emotional body within the human being, repressed. And the longer this emotion is buried there, the longer it's repressed, the more the human is finding different ways and different mechanisms to override or to cope with not feeling that repressed emotion. And this is the beginning stages of the formation of a separate self. This is the beginning stages of the artificial self. This is the beginning stages of you creating a mask that you wear in public, but really, there is an emotional root that you're afraid to feel, and also is in the same location as your true self internally, yet, once again, as you wear that mask, because you're afraid to feel what that emotion is that's repressed, you're being someone else. You're being something else to the world around you. And truly, one of the deepest emotions that's underruling this is an emotion of fear. Okay? So now that we understand this, and now that we understand that the shells that are generated in our life experience that are related to the Qlippoth, now that we understand that these are actually connected to traumatic events that we've experienced in our earlier years, which can happen, many times over. And what I mean by that is like this can happen to you in the womb. This can happen to you when you're born. This can happen to you when you're 5 years old, when you're 10 years old. This can happen at any age. This can happen when you're 65, when you're 30. These traumas and these traumatic experiences that we go through can literally happen at any age. And they do happen often. But the ones that are most energetically charged, that we typically have repressed the most and have the most control over ourself unconsciously in a bad way and in a way that doesn't benefit us, these traumas are typically 90% of the times the ones we picked up when we were from the age of when we were conceived all the way up until the age of usually 12 years old. So being a baby, a newborn baby to 12 years old. It's this time frame where we experience some of the most significant traumas, and it's at this age range when we repress that emotion for the first time. And as we get older, it's that same trauma and it's that same emotion that we haven't felt that only grows and grows and grows because we're not feeling it and because we're not processing it. that then becomes a real problem in our daily life. It becomes something that really starts to hinder us. Something that really starts to make itself clear, like, you've got to start working on this or else you're going to live a life that is not worth living. So, hopefully, with everything I just said, you're able to follow what it is that I'm talking about. I really encourage you, if you're having a hard time understanding what I'm saying, give yourself time to rewatch this part as many times as you need so that you can really follow what I'm trying to bring your awareness to. And I would also encourage you to listen with an open mind, because there may be a few of you that are sort of jumping ahead of the game and jumping to assumptions and conclusions within your own mind, maybe thinking that, oh, this hasn't happened to you. Oh, this doesn't apply to you. And I want you to understand that this does apply to you, whether you believe it or not, whether you understand it or not. Everyone listening to this right now, this will apply to you to some extent. There's not a soul on this planet that does not experience a trauma and does not experience repressing the energy of that trauma, emotionally speaking. We've all been through this. Okay? So now, connecting it back to the Qlippoth. As we're working with the Qlippoth, what we're doing is we're working to get to the nucleus of that shell. So I want you to be able to kind of understand that the shells of the Qlippoth are directly correlated to the trauma that you went through and the identity you've created around that repressed emotion from the trauma. So let me say that one more time so that you can follow what I'm actually communicating. The shells of the Qlippoth, each shell of the Qlippothic tree, the dark Kabbalistic tree, Nama, Lilith, Samael, Arab Zarok, Dagirion, Golachab, Gog Shabla, Daath, Sathariel, Gagil, Thamael. Every single one of these shells is a manifestation to some degree of a trauma that you've been through in your past that you didn't have the tools to process, so you repressed it emotionally, and then you created an identity around coping with not feeling that traumatic experience. That is your shell. It is the identity that you've formed. It's the persona. It's that artificial self. So, clearly, with that being said, when we're working with the Qlippoth now, especially if you're someone who's consciously working with the Qlippoth, which I know a lot of you do, we are working with this aspect of our own healing. We're working with an extremely intimate and an extremely sensitive and an extremely powerful side of ourself, which is the true self. Now, I really want you to understand that this is some of the hardest spiritual, emotional, psychological, mental, and physical work to do. Because whenever you're working with the true self, there is going to have to be significant healing that takes place. And there's going to have to be significant, we can almost say, untangling or undoing of the shells that we've created in our life. So let me start with saying this. There are many people that are getting into the Qlippoth. They're jumping into initiation. They're jumping into working with the tree. And they are not aware of what this journey actually is about. They're not aware that the whole point of getting into Qlippothic initiation is to be more aligned with your true self so that you can heal. So that you can reintegrate these past experiences that happened in your life and become more whole so that they don't control you unconsciously anymore. So as I said, we have so many people that jump into the Qlippoth because they saw someone's YouTube channel like mine, and they heard me talk about the Qlippoth. They heard me talk about the power you can gain. They heard me talk about the darker entities and how the darker entities work with me and how they benefit me and all these things. And this sounds very flashy, and sometimes it sounds really exciting actually, and it can oftentimes really grab someone's ego and make them jump into doing this deeper work so that they can gain more power. And as the wise man always said, with great power, there is great responsibility. And that's always going to be tried and true. So we have a lot of people getting into Qlippothic energy work, whether they're conscious of it or not. Once again, it doesn't have to be someone like intentionally working with the tree necessarily. But this, like, definitely in this context, I do want to kind of focus on that for people that are intentionally working with the tree. They're getting into something they're not really understanding, and they're not really prepared to process. They're not really prepared to heal, and they're not really prepared to go through. And this is not a beneficial thing, because it really puts a lot of shade over the true nature of the Qlippoth. It puts a shell over the true nature of what the Qlippoth represents. And as I discussed very clearly so far in this video, the Qlippoth is a healing journey so that you can reintegrate into your true self by recollecting really all the lost fragments of your soul that you've started to separate yourself from with the traumas that you experienced from the time you were born all the way up until the age that you are now. And when someone is getting into the Qlippoth and they don't understand that it's this type of healing work or this type of initiatory journey, the person oftentimes succumbs to their ego. They succumb to the shell that they've created for themselves. This is what it means to sometimes be lost within the abyss. This is what it means to fail your Qlippothic initiations. This is what it means when someone gets into demonic work or Qlippothic energetic work and their lives start spiraling downhill and they just don't know how to integrate what they're experiencing. And they don't know how to understand it from a growth perspective, but rather they start projecting everything that's happening in the sense of, oh, you know, these people are out to get me. I'm being cursed by these people. Oh, I think these entities are upset with me. It's not fair. The world is energetically controlling me. So once again, this is just a manifestation of someone who's worked with and oftentimes has called on Qlippothic healing forces and still doesn't have the capacity and doesn't have the tools to know how to actually integrate that level of healing. So what we're doing here is we're actually repeating the same exact trauma in a similar way from the very beginning of when the person went through a traumatic situation, and at that time they didn't have the tools and they didn't have the capacity to process it. So for that person who's been traumatized since the age of 5, and now let's say they're 27, now they want to get into the Qlippoth, but the side of them that's actually wanting to get into the Qlippoth is the shelled side of them. It's the shelled aspect of their persona that is actually attracted to the Qlippoth, because one, the Qlippoth can bring many, many powerful things. So although I'm talking about the healing process, the integration process, there's another aspect to the Qlippoth, which is power, control, real control, awareness, knowledge, all these other things. So the shell of the person oftentimes gets attracted to the flashy lights, the power. That's like usually the most common. But little does the person know that what they're actually getting themselves into is going to re-trigger or resurface those repressed negative emotions that they picked up from when they got traumatized, most oftentimes at a very young age or at some point in their past. So we have this person who is like hyper excited to start gaining power and start working with dark energies, getting into the Qlippoth, and then next thing you know, they're starting to feel very depressed, and they're starting to feel very lonely. They're starting to get afraid. They're starting to feel like certain things that they've created for themselves are getting broken down. Whether that's a business that they've created, whether that is an identity, whether that's relationships, whether that's habits. They start realizing these things start breaking down. They start crumbling. Now the person oftentimes looks at this and says, no, this is not good. This is bad. Did I do something wrong? Is someone cursing me? Is something coming against me? Is there an entity that I upset? That's the most ridiculous one. Is there an entity that I upset? And all this is just a projection of the person not looking inwards and not reflecting and ultimately taking responsibility for what they got themselves into, which was a real healing initiatory journey. And through the healing, there's going to be integration of the true self. So in other words, all the things that were breaking down and were crumbling were all built from an artificial space. So they no longer have room in that person's life experience because they're now embarking on a journey of the true self. So in simple terms, we're doing a deconstruction of the artificial self, the shell, to do a reconstruction of the true self, who you actually are. Now, this sounds way easier than... Okay, let me say it like this. This is way easier said than done. Way easier said than done. So taking it back to what I was just trying to make clear is that there's so many people that are jumping into Qlippothic initiation without understanding or having the right capacity and tools, the foundation, to do it successfully. And this is why so many people fail in their Qlippothic initiations. This is why there are a lot of failed occultists when it comes to the left-hand path, when it comes to being a black magician. And when I say fail, what I'm simply meaning is just someone who's getting into it without knowing what it's actually about, what it's actually doing to them. And then we have all these weird people that are projecting everything outwards. Okay, so if you go on TikTok and you look up left-hand path or you look up black magicians, you're going to see a page of tons of people that are still very much so shelled, yet they're working with darker entities, trying to manifest things externally and project things further while staying in this cycle of never being fully satisfied. Staying in a cycle of like working with these entities, hoping they're protecting them, hoping they're manifesting money for them and all these things while they're giving them offerings and all this other stuff. When in reality, the person's just missing the concept. They're missing the connection that it's related to inner healing, an inner integration of the true self. So this saturates the occult field, and it saturates the occult community, we could say, with a bunch of psychos. And I'm not here, and I promise, I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, but it really does saturate this community in this field with people that are dealing with real psychotic episodes, dealing with real mental disruption. And it's not that this is wrong or that it's bad. It's just that this is what it is. And it's simply because they did not have the proper awareness and they did not have the proper foundation before they got into Qlippothic initiation, before they started working with these darker forces. And as I'm saying, working with these darker forces does not trigger someone to go insane. It does not trigger someone to become psychotic. And it does not trigger someone's life to start spiraling out of control and go downhill. Working with the darker forces triggers healing, and it triggers integration of the true self. Now, if the person is unwilling to do that healing and unable to do the integration, then yes, them seeking the darker forces and initiating that transformation into their life was something they were still not ready to process, and therefore it can create more of a traumatic situation, which then spirals out of control for that person, where once again we have this person who starts projecting everything externally. The government's out to get me. The Illuminati's been targeting me. I could be on this bench for hours talking about some of the crazy things that people believe. And it's unfortunate for those people because they're living in such a fear-based reality. I mean, I can't imagine living that way. And I've experienced that state of consciousness. I know what it's like to live in fear. You know, as I've been doing this deeper work myself, I've been able to see within myself some of the things that I picked up at a young age that actually caused me to view the world as if it was against me. And this was something that I had to become aware of and something that I had to heal by feeling. And that's where it started, healing by feeling. So what does that mean? I had to feel this fear that I had in my body in order to start integrating properly. And then by the feeling process, with the feeling process, then I became aware and conscious of the roots of where it came from. So this is important information as we're working with the Qlippoth, and what Qlippothic initiation is all about, truly, is this inner growth, is this inner integration. So all the power, all the control, all the knowledge, that is a byproduct of the deeper healing and the deeper integration that you're going to be experiencing and going through inherently while working with the Qlippoth. So it's very important, once again, that you have the proper foundation before getting yourself in to Qlippothic initiation. And ask yourself, am I in touch with the feminine energy inside of myself? Am I being receptive? Am I actively letting go of what I'm realizing are my attachments? And most importantly, am I acknowledging and allowing myself to feel my emotions? These are the three keys that underlie the feminine energy and the foundation for what you need when going into the Qlippoth, because going into the Qlippoth, those traumas that you went through will resurface emotionally speaking and energetically speaking. When you get into the Qlippoth, your life will change quickly to put you in situations and circumstances where you can actually re-observe and re-see some of those traumatic situations that you went through within your life. And most oftentimes, you won't even be aware that's what's happening when you're in the midst of the initiations or when you're in the midst of the growth process. You'll see it, and there'll be a part of you that understands it and recognizes it. A part of you will feel familiar with it, but then another part of you will be like, oh, I'm just going through my initiation. I have to overcome the obstacles. I have to overcome the challenges. When in reality, it's actually just a resurfacing of the exact, some of the more profound traumas or traumatic situations, circumstances that you've been through in your past that are recircling themselves so that you can emotionally integrate it by feeling through the experience and going through it. It is not just about overcoming your initiations. Actually, matter of fact, it has nothing to do with overcoming anything. Because when it comes to doing real inner work, when it comes to actual healing, there's no such thing as overcoming. When an emotion comes up to the surface, you don't overcome the emotion. You have to go into the emotion and you have to align with it and process it by feeling it. It's that simple. Overcoming is just another form of overriding. And this is something that this is something that I had to learn the hard way through my Qlippothic initiations. That's how I started. I was like, oh, I'm overcoming every initiation. I'm overcoming every obstacle, every challenger. And every time I was successful, because I burned out. My physical body gave up on me. And it said, you're exhausted. You're wasting your time and you're wasting your energy. Surrender. So I had to learn this the hard way, and it took time. It took me about an entire year since initiating myself into the Qlippoth to then get to the point where I could actually surrender to a strong extent, where I actually allowed myself to just let go of my need to always try to control everything. And there was still a lot of attachments that I had at that point, but that was a big one of just like surrendering. And it's a learning process, and no one's going into this type of growth or this type of healing perfect. No one's going into it with all the tools, with all the, no one's going into it with the perfect foundation. You're going to have to learn, and you're going to have to course correct as you go, but you need to know the general tools, and you need to have a general foundation, because the foundation is your capacity to process. And once again, if you don't have that foundation getting into this level of growth, you're not going to have the capacity to process some of those repressed negative emotions that will be resurfaced while you're in the Qlippoth. And what's that going to do to you? It is going to further traumatize you. And then you're going to end up in a psych ward. Then you're going to be the person that's like, the Chinese government has targeted me. You're going to be the person that says the Rothschilds have my name on a poster in their living room and they're trying to take me down. You don't want to be that person. You don't want to get into this without that capacity to process the emotions. And part of this foundation is just understanding Qlippothic initiation is a real healing journey. And it is one of the most, if not the most powerful form of integration with the true self on our planet. And everyone on some level actually knows this. Like on some primal intuitive level within the entire human species, we actually all understand this. We all understand that our own repressed emotions that exist inside of us are what is keeping us from living our truest self and keeping us from living a life of real purpose. This is why people are so afraid of the demonic, so afraid of dark energy, so afraid of emotions. so afraid of feeling. It's because all these different avenues trigger this healing process. It triggers this level of growth. So in this video, it was my main intention to really communicate what the Qlippoth is about, actually under the surface. Because I've spoke about it many times before, and I've spoke about it from a mental perspective, where I've given you my experiences with the different spheres. I've given you the mindset you need to be successful with it. I've given you just knowledge on what it's like and what comes with it. But now I'm really giving you more of a deeper awareness of what the Qlippoth is about, that goes underneath that mental level, that mental layer, which is the healing emotional layer of this work. And I'm doing this with the intention of really people that are going to be studying my content and learning from me, learning about the Qlippoth, so that they can come across a video like this to know what they're getting themselves into, rather than me hyping you up to go in mentally without you having the capacity to actually process what's going on. Because I have seen that does take place, you know, which is why I would always recommend someone booking a one-on-one call with me or a mentorship with me if you're getting into Qlippothic initiation. Because I'm someone who's been through that whole tree. I've crossed the abyss, and I've integrated my true self through that experience, and I'm still at a phase in my life where I'm still integrating more of my true self. But I can confidently say I've integrated a portion of my true self that I would say 99% of the human population has not touched. So getting a call with me or getting a mentorship, more importantly, would be very beneficial if you're getting into this type of work. Whether you're initiating it consciously or just if you're dealing with these energies in general, because I can help you better understand some of these deep-rooted emotions you have inside of yourself already. And I maybe can help you as we do that work together. I maybe can help you get to some of the roots of where those emotions started and where you started that repressing. So if you want to book with me, at that second link below in the YouTube description is where you can book the calls with me. With that being said, this is a 52-minute long video so far, so I think I really covered what I needed to say. There's so much more I can go into about this. There's so much more that I can cover. But just to keep it simple, to just wrap it up and put a bow on this present here, the Qlippoth is the realm of the deep unconscious, the deepest parts of our unconscious. And specifically, it's dealing with the artificial aspects of ourself that we create for ourselves based on trauma, where we repress an emotion that's negatively charged and we do not allow ourselves to feel. That is what each shell of the Qlippoth is representing. And each shell that you work through or work with, you are integrating that much more of what that repressed negative emotion is. And you're becoming that much more of your true self. And this is not a journey that ever ends in life. The Qlippoth always exists. It's the roots of the tree. The tree of life always exists. It's the branches. So that's the beautiful things that can manifest and that come out of life once you are integrated. You're never going to have full access to the tree of life and to be able to manifest wonderful, fruitful things if the roots of your tree are poisoned, or if the roots of your tree are not being watered. This is why Qlippothic initiation really does bring power, because we're like watering the roots, and we're like really focusing on making sure the roots are growing in the right place, have the right fertilizer, getting enough sun, and all these wonderful things so that we can have the best fruits. We can have the best leaves, the best branches. We can be the biggest tree. That is the Qlippoth. So, with that being said, this is going to wrap it up. If you enjoyed this video, if you thought this was a unique subject, hit that thumbs up button. And also drop down in the comment section and let me know how you received this video. Let me know how this actually spoke to you. Let me know if you resonate with it. Let me know if you're someone who right now is currently dealing with these Qlippothic energies. Let me know if you've become aware of the healing aspect of what this is really all about. So go ahead and let me know all these different things in the comment section. I would love to hear what you have to say about it. Now also, if you want to get notified whenever I'm posting, make sure you're hitting the notification bell. You don't want to miss out when I post this content, trust me. Also, make sure you're subscribing to my YouTube channel, because obviously this is a very unique YouTube channel where I promise you there's nobody else speaking about what I'm speaking about in the way that I'm speaking about it. So go ahead and subscribe. What that also does is that further links you into the content itself, because there's an energetic component there. So if you want to further link in and get more value, subscribe to the channel. If not, forget about it. Now, I want to say this, you have my full permission to copy and paste the link of this video or any of my other videos that you find valuable and send it out to anyone, family, friends, or social media platforms that you feel like need to hear this content. I encourage you to spread it, okay? If you know anybody that will get value from what it is that I'm teaching, what it is that I'm talking about, send it to them. If you listen to this video and someone flashed in your mind while I'm making this video, send it to them. It could be very beneficial for them. And it also helps me build up my empire. And one of my intentions is to spread my content like a wildfire. Okay? Now, I'm going to take your awareness to literally the most important link that is in the YouTube description itself. This is the first link at the very top. You cannot miss it. Go right down there, first link. This is where you can join the Patreon. On the Patreon, I have an entire vault of exclusive occult content, and none of it is on my public YouTube channel. At this point, the Patreon is like a secondary YouTube channel, except the content that's on there is more advanced and more personal than what you're getting right here. So, for example, some of the content that's on my Patreon is giving you actual practices on how to have that proper foundation when you're working with your deep unconscious mind, when you're working with your emotional body, or if you're getting into Qlippothic initiation. So I have actual practices that I'm giving you to help you go through this process, which are extremely important to take advantage of. All of that's on the Patreon. Tier number 2 of the Patreon gives you access to a magic training course, which is really valuable, especially if you're a beginner occultist. Tier number 3 is the most popular tier of the Patreon itself, and that speaks for itself. This is called the Universe.B Vampire Service. This is a ritual service that I perform on the 29th of every single month that has one. Once again, this is the most popular tier on the Patreon itself. In this service, what I do is I transfer my energetic body, my vampiric energy body, and I place it or I send it to you as the participant. And as long as you're receptive to that, and as long as you openly receive it and you're willing to do the inner growth or go through the inner transformation, then that energy field transfers to you, and then you can start using it to your benefit. So basically what this vampire energy field does is it gets you much more in tune with those feminine aspects of yourself. The receptive aspect, the letting go aspect, and most importantly, the feeling aspect. So this is why in the beginning stages of the Universe.B Vampire Service, there's a transition phase where people oftentimes start to experience some of those repressed emotions that come up to the surface, which can make them tired, can make them fatigued, can make them angry, can make them irritable, whatever. So that's just to show the nature of this level of service that I offer and how people go through that transition phase. Now, ultimately, what this does is this gives the person an ability to pull in energy from dark energy and chaos around them to then transmute into their own power and evolutionary potential. Because as you're integrating and as you're healing your own repressed negative energies, you're now able to use that same negative or dark energy that exists around you and pull that in and further integrate it into more of your true self. So it does become your power, and the entire time it was your power. The only reason why it wasn't your power is because you were repressing that negative energy, and that was causing you to see it in the external world around you as evil or wrong, when in reality the whole time it was never that. It was actually meant to be your power. And once again, this is what the Universe.B Vampire Service helps to initiate within your energy body, within your energy field. So if this is something you're interested in, tier number 3 is how you take advantage of this service. We'll leave it there. Now, as we move into tier number 4, this is the top tier of the Patreon. This gives you access to everything from the previous tiers, except you get some bonus content, which is a psychic prediction on a monthly basis. So I pull my tarot card and a personal oracle card, and it's designed to give you the energetic archetypal experience for the new month as you're going into it. And the reading itself is based on your astrological zodiac sign. So once again, if you're a top tier member, you're going to be able to understand what are the archetypal initiatory healing energies that are coming in for this new month. And you can be better prepared for it. So if that's what you're interested in, tier number 4. All of this is in the Patreon. Check it out. At the second link below, this is where you can book a call with me. If you've been studying my content and you're curious about what it is that I'm teaching, and you want to ask me questions that you have personally, I would highly recommend booking a call with me. It can be very, very powerful. It can be very beneficial, okay? Now, if you're someone who's taking your practice to an even deeper degree, and you're really going through a healing process, you're really going through a growth phase in your life or a transitional phase, then I would highly recommend the mentorship option. I have a 6-week mentorship and I have a 3-month mentorship. These are going to be amazing to have me as an actual guide, an emotional and a spiritual guide, to help you process and navigate what it is that you're going through, what it is that you're experiencing, so that you can actually integrate the journey as you're going through it, rather than further repressing and overriding and then digging yourself a hole that you end up falling into and getting stuck in. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely consider it. That's tier number 2. This is my new favorite thing to do. It's my new favorite service, is doing these calls, specifically the mentorships. Within that same second link below, you have an option to book a tarot card reading with me. It's a very unique reading I promise you've never received before, okay? I've done so many readings. I get tons of valuable feedback. If it's something you want to take advantage of, in that same second link, you can book that. Now, in the third link in the YouTube description, this is the last link I'm going to take your awareness to. This is where you can become a YouTube member. And as you're a YouTube member, you're getting access to a multitude of different benefits. Most importantly, though, you're getting access to what is called the Psychic Warfare Emoji Program. And what this is this is a sequence of emojis that I've designed myself that are based on real occult principles, and you can use them in a specific configuration. You link in the name of a target, hit enter, and it actually causes psychic effects to the target of your choice. This is an amazing way to actually express healthy aggression and send this psychic energy to the target of your choice, which also will help you initiate a transformative process in your own life in return, because everything is truly connected. So if this is something you want to take advantage of, definitely consider it. There's well over 2,000 posts where people are using it. There's people using it right now in this moment. Click that third link below, join at the top, and then you'll have access. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this is where I'm going to wrap it up. I appreciate all of you very, very, very much, and I hope you all have an amazing rest of the day or night, wherever you are, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.